What are the implications of gentrification on African Americans and their communities? Okay, so what is gentrification? Gentrification is the process of remodeling or revitalizing an old, low-income neighborhood to fit the needs of new incomers as they come into these cities. As you can see in this picture, it's a picture of over the Rhine, downtown Cincinnati. And in the first picture, the buildings are, the windows are missing or broken, and the buildings themselves look torn down, and it doesn't look like there's much human activity. However, through the process of gentrification, you can see in the next picture that the buildings themselves are restored, and the windows are fixed, and there are small stores in the bottoms of the buildings showing human activity. Although gentrification might seem beneficial to these cities, I'll explain later the economic and social implications that come with it. Okay, so first we have to look at why African Americans are the most affected by gentrification. In the early 20th century, poor African Americans were moving from the rural South to the urban North to find jobs. This was called the Great Migration. With the new migration of people coming into these cities, the middle class, people that were originally in the cities, didn't find it much as a need to stay in the cities and started moving out to the suburbs. This is where we start to see a separation of races within the neighborhoods. We see a predominantly black neighborhoods in the city and predominantly white neighborhoods in the suburbs. To combat this separation of the races in the neighborhoods, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development created the Fair Housing Act, which made sure that a renter or buyer of a home was not discriminated against. However, Jenny Schultz, who has a PhD in public policy from Harvard, found that 50 years after this act was passed, the U.S. had still not reached racial integration within the neighborhoods. With this data that she collected from the city of Detroit, as you can see, it is split up into 4 parts, this being poverty, Black, Hispanic, and Asian. Through this chart, you can see that the different races, their neighborhoods do not intermix with each other, and they tend to stay in one area of the city. You can also see that the poverty area and the Black area correspond with each other, showing why gentrification impacts African Americans the most. As I stated before, that the middle class was moving out of the cities, we now see them coming back into the cities. Mark Montgomery, who wrote the Urban Transformation of the Developing World, found that in the year 2050 that we only have more rural or urban dwellers than rural dwellers. With this increase of the middle class coming back into the cities, we find that more stores and shops and better living housing are now being built because they have more money to spend. With this, the neighborhoods become more desirable place to live, increasing the cost of living. As you can see in this graph, it was collected over some of the most populated cities in the U.S. and over a 10-year time period, you can see that the percentage of people spending half of their incomes on housing has increased in all these cities. With this increase of rent, the lower class are forced to relocate, whether it be to another poor neighborhood or into shelters. Economic implications aren't the only things that gentrification causes. It also causes social implications. Usually before a neighborhood is gentrified, it has high crime rates. However, through the process of gentrification, those crime rates decrease because the new incomers are more likely to bring the police with them if they see something suspicious, whereas the older residents might have looked past it. Although this seems good because it lowers crime rates, it then causes tension between the two races and social classes. An example of this is the Cincinnati riots in 2001. This started in over the Rhine, Cincinnati, which I showed you a picture of previously. And it started when an unarmed African-American boy was shot by a white police officer. This then sparked a 4-day riot in the neighborhood of Over the Rhine. And after 2001, Over the Rhine was a very dangerous place to live. And in 2009, the FBI crime report data showed that it was the most dangerous place to live in the whole United States. However, this is a picture of the police force that was there in the riots. However, through 10 years of gentrification happening to this neighborhood, we can now see many positive effects in the neighborhood, such as shops and stores and attractions opening up in the neighborhood. Although this may seem good, we also see changes in the race demographics in the city, which was once a predominantly white neighborhood, or black neighborhood, is now a predominantly white neighborhood, and we see a new culture emerging. Through this data, you can also see that not only has the race demographics changed, but also the rent cost in this neighborhood. Over on the right is the neighborhood of Over the Rhine, and in the blue shaded area, you can see that the rent in that area has increased by 25% or more. This shows that these low-income people and families are being kicked out of their homes. Some solutions are to have a compromise between the original residents and the urban planners. If they would have a town meeting or neighborhood meeting before the gentrification process happens, they'll be able to discuss what they want to see change and what they want to see stay the same, so there isn't such a drastic change in the culture in the neighborhood. However, a limitation to this is that some of the original residents might not want there to be any change at all, and they might view any change to their community might be bad. Another solution is to create more economic opportunities for the lower class. This would be offering them jobs at the stores and restaurants that are now being opened in these cities. However, a limitation to this is that businesses might not want to take the risk of hiring somebody from a poverty-stricken, high crime rated area if they wanted more business. Another solution is to offer tax breaks for developers if they're able to create low-income housing. This benefits the developers because they won't have to pay taxes on their buildings, and it also benefits the low income because they won't have to worry about the increased rent. However, a limitation is this, that the buildings can then become neglected and become an eyesore to the community. And this is my website.
Okay. Two questions for you, Jordan. No. The classroom logo. Classroom logo one. Oh my gosh. Okay. How did you select the strategies you used to gather your information or conduct research? And then were they effective?
I use the strategies of using the Raven test on my sources. I look to see if the authors had a reputation or a background in the material that they're writing about, and if they had a college degree in the subject matter that I was studying. I also used to make sure that the sources were not biased, because oftentimes I found sources that were biased against gentrification. And I also had to make sure that the sources I used were up to date, because a lot of times, since gentrification is based on the census and a lot of the data is based on census, I had to make sure that I was from the most recent census. And I felt like this method was effective because it helped me disregard the bad sources that I found and the less credible.
Okay, thank you. And then your other one is, if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct related to this issue?
I would probably conduct, like I mentioned before, that the low-income people are relocated. I might want to do more research into where they are and what impact they have on the shelters or government programs that have to deal with homelessness and how much that costs them to house them and take care of them.